Hello everyone, this is part 14 of What If Naruto Had a Secret, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Slipping into the semi-dark building of Leaf Central, Anko grimaced at the knowledge of what such an early morning summons could mean. Walking past the empty desks and rooms, she made her way to the stairs that would eventually take her to the Hokage's office. Footsteps echoing eerily as she climbed, Anko almost felt as if she was entering Orochimaru's lair once more. She shivered at the memory. In all honesty, this was the last place she wanted to be, mainly because she could still see the disappointment that had been clearly etched in the Sandaim's face upon her return from Fushimi. He hadn't shouted, or ranted, those she could have handled. Instead he had spoken in an almost whisper, firm but soft. He was polite, but he hid none of his disappointment. He had somehow managed to make her feel guilty about her decision in taking Naruto. It made her feel as if this was less about her judgment and more about her betraying his trust. Anko hated that, despite how she should feel after his recent decisions, she felt guilty about betraying his trust. So she had thrown herself into training Naruto, pushing him to refine everything he had learned. Had worked him almost to the breaking point, in an effort to ensure that the Hokage would see it. See how guilty she felt, how much she wanted to do exactly what he wanted. How much Anko actually cared about Naruto, when she cared about nothing else. Shaking it all off, she quietly exited the stairway and then, unconsciously greeting the hidden Anbu, strode down the hallway to the door that was looming larger and larger. Pausing, she took a moment to gather herself and then threw the door open, entering with her usual gusto. Hey ya old man, you wanted to see me. Anko-san, the Hokage said, looking up from a scroll on his desk, his face neutral. Good morning. Morning, Anko returned, hiding her disappointment at his lack of usual warmth. Then she noticed Kakashi and Hayate and blinked in surprise. Huh, what are you two doing here? Nothing important, Kakashi said immediately, hastily shoving his recently recovered book into his pocket. Anko said, smirking slightly before looking at the sick-looking man seated before the Hokage's desk. She knew Hayate, they had worked together for a while, but he had never been one of her favorite people. Still, she had some respect for him, so instead of making a wisecrack about drugs, she arched an eyebrow, wondering silently at the pallor of his skin. Hayate in turn offered her a weak smile before coughing into a red-stained rag, which set off an alarm bell in her head. Anko-san, the Sandaime finally continued, his tone soft but firm. The reason I asked you to come in is because Hayate-san needs to take several days off from active duty. This would leave his team without a sensei, and this close to the exams I couldn't assign another person. Anko resisted the urge to glance yet again at the sick man in question, already knowing the obvious from the few clues she had. There was no other explanation, and it was all because he had slipped up and allowed a spider to bite him and worsen his condition. I see, Anko said just as seriously, crossing her arms and lowering her chin. What about the second exam? I know you wanted me to proctor it. Kakashi-san said that he would do that, the Sandaime said, lacing his fingers together while giving her a look. I need you to take responsibility for Team Hayate and Uzumaki Naruto, at least for the duration of this exam. Anko let out a small breath. Whether this was a chance from the heavens or merely a coincidence, it didn't matter. The Hokage was offering her a chance to regain his trust, and it was a chance to help Naruto prove himself to everyone. So of course she would accept this, but she also understood one other thing. There could not be Team Hayate and Naruto, there had to be one team. Just one. A single unit. You won't have to do much, just make sure to enter them into the Chunin exam today at noon. After that, just make sure they show up in 2 days and be there for the completion of the second exam. The Sandaime was saying, his voice never changing. I'll do it, Anko said evenly, trying to figure out a way to forge the 3 genin into a true team within 3 days. However, to do that she needed to know the other two slightly better. No point in them if they had to be around to work with Naruto later. That's it then, both of you are dismissed. Sandaime said politely, then added as Anko turned to head for the door. Thank you, Anko. Don't worry, Anko responded casually with a flick of her wrist. For the chance to TA princess I'd do almost anything. Closing the door behind her, she was relieved to hear the amused chuckle from the Sandime. Free of the office now and staring at an uncomfortable-looking Hayat, she turned back to the more immediate concern of forging a team out of those three. I need to know a few things. What exactly do you need to know? Hayat asked, coughing into the rag yet again as he led the way back toward the stairs. How big you are, Anko stayed sarcastically before snorting. Your team, what else? I need to know something about them if I'm gonna be their sensei. Why? Hayat immediately asked, his tone guarded. The truth, Anko asked, shooting him an exasperated look. Your the Hokage knows, Kakashi knows. Probably everyone Jonin or above. So obviously this isn't temporary, so I need to know what to do with those little since I'm gonna be responsible now. Hayat paused staring at her, rather shrewdly, before he coughed. Aberrane Shino is capable, he creates plans within plans and he seems to have almost no emotions. He's brutal, efficient and at times utterly frightening. He is however a bit too dependent on his bugs, even for his family. Hey, Anko managed falling into step behind the man as they descended the stairs. No personality, huh? None. Hayat said in agreement before coughing once more. Yakumano Ino on the other hand, she appears to be nothing but emotions. Competitive, temperamental, and comes across a complete ditz. Gee, color me impressed. She also has more talent at Kenjutsu than anyone I've ever known. Hayat explained in response, his tone almost proud. I trained her for the last 2 weeks in nothing but Kenjutsu. Other people wouldn't have been able to pick it up. Ino grasped everything I taught her easily. Impressive, Anko drawled as they finally left the stairs and started for the front doors. Anything else? She has this odd tendency to notice things that others overlook. I think it comes from her use of the family jutsu, even if she doesn't use them that often. Well, sounds like the makings of a decent team. Anko said in amusement as they finally left the Hokage Tower and stepped out into the streets. Anko-senpai, Hayat said, coughing once more. What exactly are you thinking about doing to them? I'm going to forge them into the most dangerous team possible. Anko said blandly, raising an eyebrow. You only have 3 days, Hayat responded tiredly. How exactly are you going to manage that? Akagahara, Anko said simply, then seeing the surprise on his face cackled before walking off down the street. Yawning, Naruto's eyes fluttered open wearily, only to squint as the annoying buzzing of his alarm clock reached him. Sitting up, he yawned while knocking his sleeping cap off. Looking around blearily he sighed, tossing his covers aside before climbing to his feet. As per his newfound habit, Anko insisted on it. He grabbed the few kunai near his bed and fired them off blindly at the targets she had affixed to his far wall. He missed each one. Naruto however didn't care, he was too busy lamenting his lack of sleep, which had been sadly short supply ever since returning from Fushimi. Apparently Anko had decided, for some unknown reason, to revamp her already insane training practices. The only bright side was that she had adjusted the training time so that the sun was actually up when they started training. Stumbling his way through the untidy apartment, he managed to clear his room, the hallway and enter the bathroom with little to no fuss. Shedding his sleep shirt and pants, he turned on the shower, which sputtered to life, and then climbed in. Swaying on his feet, he went through the motions of showering. This served to edge his mind toward consciousness, which sadly prompted his mind onto the same touchy subject he had been dealing with since the news of his bloodline. His family, the ones he pretended not to miss, the ones that he hated and wanted so badly. Were they ashamed of him, or hate him, or was something just wrong with him? Why didn't they want him? They were questions that he had asked thousands of times, and he still had no answers. All he knew was that he felt hurt, betrayed and angry, with nothing to rage against. Shaking it all off and finishing his shower, he tried to finish waking up, but failed for the most part. Searching absently for a towel, he frowned, dimly aware that he had none on hand, which meant he would just have to drip dry. Sourly he stumbled out of the bathroom and out to the kitchen, where he gathered his customary breakfast of ramen and milk before plopping down on a chair. Eating in silence, he paused suddenly, looking around as if remembering something he had forgotten. It was important, but since he couldn't think of anything, he turned his attention back to his meal. A few minutes later he paused yet again, looking around, sure that he was forgetting something important. Turning back to his meal, he lifted a warm noodle to his mouth and froze, the noodles in his stomach turning to lead. Anko had threatened him with genjutsu training, or more accurately, she had threatened to cast a genjutsu and fill his apartment with something unpleasant. Lowering his noddles, he looked up, blue eyes darting left and then right, like a prey catching the scent of an approaching predator. Everything seemed normal, but Naruto was suddenly very uneasy about his nudity. Covering his, he quickly stood and raced back into his bedroom to frantically cover himself, nearly hurting a very important part of his anatomy. Breathing easier, he walked back out into his apartment and found Anko sitting on his couch, holding a handful of pictures in her hands. Naruto felt his hairs stand on end. Anko. Hey, you sensed me, huh? Anko said absently, grinning evilly at the pictures. Not quite a dispel, but that's still an improvement. Quote. Are those pictures? Well, of course, you're quite photogenic, Naruto. Anko said, glancing at him, a suggestive grin on her lips as she stood. Quote. Naruto blinked, his cheeks coloring at the realization. Anyway, I figure this hammers home the point that if you can't dispel or detect genjutsu, then you're at an attacker's mercy. Anko said, gesturing with the pictures, revealing for a moment a stark Naruto. I guess I should deliver these around the village, maybe that Sakura girl would like to see. Or ooh, how about Ino? Naruto paled and then narrowed his eyes. Oi, give them to me. No, don't think so. Anko chirped happily. You want, you'll have to come and take, Fine. Naruto roared and darted forward, striking nothing but empty air as Anko dodged and moved toward the open balcony window. Naruto was hot on her heels. Ino was not an early riser, as a matter of fact she was more of a mid-afternoon riser, and any time she was forced out of her warm bed and out into the world at the crack of dawn made her irritable. Hayate had known this but had not really cared too much, still he respected her enough to keep team training until later in the afternoon. For which Ino had kept from him. Their new, mysterious, sensei however didn't seem to have any interest in living. Ino could still remember her mother's almost apologetic smile this morning, having roused her out of bed. Ino had been understandable irate about this, after all she had only been home one day from her kenjutsu training. Yet her mom had explained that he knew sensei wanted her up and ready to go in the usual training area by sunrise. Muttering phrases that her mom conveniently chose to not hear, Ino had gotten ready, grabbed the ninja Hayate had loaned her, and then stormed off. She encountered Shino shortly after this, and despite her anger and worry about Hayate, they had walked in companionable silence to the training area. Where they waited. They had both watched the sky brighten, the sun rise, and listened as both of their stomachs rumbled in hunger. Irritable, Ino had preformed the kenjutsu form that Hayate had taught her while Shino began talking with his bugs. At almost noon she had stopped and sat under a tree, arms crossed and glaring at the forest, determined to kill their sensei as soon as they arrived. I'm getting tired of this waiting, I'd like someone to tell us what the hell is going on. Ino finally snapped, frustrated beyond belief. I am sure the answer will come soon, Shino said in his persistently calm manner. Ino felt her eye twitch slightly, a sure sign of a building explosion. She mastered herself, however, it was almost pointless to berate the boy since he could say nothing else. Exasperated, she looked at the sky, catching the edge of the sun as it danced through the foliage. Something about that made her blink in realization and look around. Where was Naruto? He should have been there, after all he was part of their team and Hayate had never mentioned that changing. Thinking about the other blonde, Ino wasn't sure whether to be relieved he wasn't around or worried. Ino-san, I have been meaning to discuss something with you. Snapping out of her thoughts, she focused on Shino, wondering what he was about to say. He seemed to be considering his next words, at least until the sound of a small explosion echoed through the air. Followed by a smug female voice. Come on, can't you move any faster? Quote exclamation mark. Hold still. Another, even louder, male voice called back. Ino blinked and got to her feet, looking in the direction the voices had come from. While she couldn't be sure, Ino felt confident that the second one belonged to Naruto. This was proven a minute later as a woman, dressed in almost nothing but fish netting and a trench coat, leaped into the training area. Followed shortly after Naruto, who had a kunai in hand and in his eyes. The blonde in question rebounded from his heavy landing and pushed off extremely quickly while thrusting his kunai for the now grinning woman's face. Ino blinked, shocked, and it was over just like that. Suddenly Naruto was on the ground, the woman's foot stomping into his sea while she crossed her arms. PFFH, you must be getting tired, ya brat. Normally I'd have to K4 or 5 clones before this. You stupid psychotic bitch Naruto said, choking off as the foot stomped on his sea yet again. Hey, Ino said, startled, reaching for her ninja too. The woman turned her attention to the girl and Ino started to unsheath her sword, only she froze halfway through for no apparent reason. The woman in question, however, grinned brighter than ever, which somehow made her even more scary. Careful, princess, you could hurt yourself with that. Ino tried to say something but found her mouth clamped shut without any apparent means, which frightened her. Relax, that's just a paralyzing jutsu, it'll wear off in a few minutes. The woman explained, stepping off of Naruto to stretch. I take it you're the Yakumana girl, which means. At this the woman turned her attention to a still calm Shino. That little bugger is Abraume Shino. Oi, what the hell is wrong with you? Naruto shouted, hopping to his feet, his face angry. The woman absently smacked him upside his head, her grin never fading as she looked back at Ino. In case you're wondering, I'm Matreshi Anko, your new sensei. Ino couldn't help but make an incredulous noise at that announcement, which seemed to irritate Anko, who threw a kunai which seemed to come from nowhere within inches of Ino's ear. I have a low tolerance to B and I have no problem K either of you. I told you she was a psycho. Naruto mumbled, crossing his arms and glaring at Anko. The room was simple, a stone floor with various items leaning against the walls and white tapestries hanging down at intervals. A red carpet, tripped in white, ran the full length of the floor from the entrance to the raised section where a high-backed seat and curved desk rested. It was simple and yet at the same time it was intimidating. It was a formal meeting hall, used only on the rare occasion of a truly important event. The naming of a Hokage, a private marriage between two high-ranking ninja, peace treaties, declarations of war. The Sandaime, who was sitting behind the desk smoking his pipe while pretending to be the iron foundation that the village needed, had used this hall for all of those things. He had named the Yondaime Hokage here, he had seen the marriage of several powerful ninja, signed several peace treaties and declarations of wars. So much time, he mused before shaking all of that off and focusing on the selected ninja before him. These 20 were the chosen senseis of the current group of rookie genin. Each was serious except for one who was busy eating dango and trying to flirt with the Anbu commander. The Sandaime felt a twinge of various emotions seeing her, but kept those carefully in check. It should be obvious why you've all be assembled, the Hokage finally said, staring out at them closely, his memory flashing back to when most of them were genin themselves. Taking a puff he blew a smoke ring, dispelling the memories. Of course Hokage-sama, Kurenai said respectfully, almost brimming with energy and pride. The Sandaime offered her an indulgent smile, knowing that she was anxious to prove her worth as a sensei. So which of the newly graduated genin are ready? He was sorely disappointed when only 2 people stepped forward, one an attractive female with the red eyes, the other wearing a brown trench coat and eating dango. Well, Kurenai, Anko, are there any genin that you'd recommend? Studying them, the old man took a puff on his pipe before sighing. Please remember that it's recommended that they have at least 8 missions. Hokage-sama, one question. Kurenai said respectfully, keeping from glancing at the woman beside her. Mitarashi Anko is only the sensei for Uzumaki Naruto, who I doubt could handle this exam. Excuse me, Anko interrupted, staring at Kurenai. You don't think Naruto couldn't handle this stupid test? Ah, that's right. I can see how someone with your record might find it difficult, Yuhi Kuhai. What was that? Kurenai said slowly, a intent beginning to radiate off her. Nothing, Anko smirked, raising an eyebrow. Just pointing that for someone that suffered setbacks, the Chunin exams could be viewed as dangerous. Are you trying to pick a fight? Kurenai snapped, glaring at the older woman. Anko, however, looked away, addressing the Hokage. My Solida has completed a B-ranked and an A-ranked mission. Team Hayat has managed at least one successful B-rank mission. Shooting Kurenai a look, she snorted. These are 3 genin that have been trained by a former Anbu captain as well as a special jonin and not some wannabe jonin. My team has handled an A-ranked mission and several C-ranked missions. Kurenai shouted, before stepping up to point at Anko. Hokage-sama, if you let this woman's, Solider, and that team compete, then what message are you sending? Besides, don't you think she might be just trying to remove them? We all remember her genin test and who her sense. Enough, the Hokage suddenly said, his tone radiating authority. You are both grown women and jonin. Any problems that you two have should not interfere or cloud your judgment. Am I clear? As crystal, Anko said, her eyes almost narrowing. When Kurenai nodded, albeit reluctantly, the Sandaime took a puff on his pipe, attempting to ease his heart back to normal. He sensed Kakashi's focus shifting to him, and he made it a point of pretending to be fine. Starting with Kurenai-san then. The woman in question lifted her fingers into the proper position and almost spat out the names hatefully while glaring at Anko, who was happily munching her dango once more. The Kurenai lead Team 7, Uchiha Sasuke, Inuzuka Kiba, and Haruno Sakura, under the name of Yuhi Kurenai, I nominate him to take the Chunin selection exam. Anko-san. Yay, yay. Anko, Team 9 formerly Hayats. Naruto, Ino, Shino, they can all take the exam. Anko said, waving a hand before putting her dango up and stretching. Are we done now? I think this should be done properly, the Sandaime said, locking his eyes with Anko. The woman stared back, her face carefree as always, but he saw her uneasiness. Then smiling sweetly, she put her hand into the proper position. Sure, whatever. The Anko-led, formerly Hayat-led, Team 9, Uzumaki Naruto, Aburame Shino and Yakumana Ino, under the name Mitarashi Anko, the same as Tamai, right. Nodding, the Hokage looked at the other gathered jonins, tone serious. Anyone else? No. Very well, we are done for now. Dismissed. They all did just that, with Anko trailing behind, but eventually they were alone and the Sandaime felt himself slump into his seat slightly. Kakashi was there almost instantly, placing a cup on the desk before him. Hokage-sama, you can't keep this up much longer. Chuckling, the Hokage sipped at the herbal drink, appreciating the medicine as always. Setting it down, he looked up at the masked man, radiating confidence that only he could manage. Ah, Kakashi-kun, I will be fine. Do we have any word on Jiraiya? Well, we've whispered in the right places that it's urgent that you see him. About the Yondaime's legacy, Kakashi said, shaking his head. As for word, nothing yet, but knowing him, he'll probably just turn up. Yes, he was always surprising, the Sandaime agreed before sighing heavily. As if by unspoken command, the Anbu commander left and the Sandaime closed his eyes, wondering just how much longer he could keep going. The only answer he could find was, long enough. Geez, why do you think she this Konohamaru kid? Ino muttered as they moved among the trees. Oi. Cause like she said, she was drunk. Naruto responded irritably, keeping pace beside her. Shino fought the grimace as he sensed yet another argument building between the two. His head was already throbbing from the migraine he was developing from their arguments, which were getting worse every time. If Ino suggested one place, Naruto would argue and had to be dragged kicking to check it out. If Naruto suggested something, Ino would do the exact same thing. It was like the last mission they had been on together, only worse. No, I mean why, Ino said in annoyance. He's the Hokage's grandson, only an insane person would actually him cause they were drunk. At what point did she seem sane to you? Naruto muttered. She was just trying to scare us, Ino snapped. Shino almost but not quite whimpered as his headache increased in strength. At least, however, they sounded more like a married couple now than the cats and dogs from earlier. We cannot risk it, Ino-san. My family says that she came by here not too long ago. Oi. I still don't get how you can tell that sort of thing. Naruto said, sounding thoroughly confused. My bugs sustain themselves on chakra, Shino explained, glancing at the blonde behind him. Thus they can distinguish between people's chakra. Since she did use chakra, my bugs were exposed to it and they learned that scent. Orc. Naruto said slowly, clearly not understanding. So they're following Anko's chakra. Correct, Shino said, looking forward once more. However, the scent is becoming weaker due to how much time has passed since she traveled this way. Then why are we going so slow? Naruto said in frustration, darting forward. Hey, Naruto, get your back here. Ino shouted angrily. Let him go, Shino said calmly, resigned to the fact that they would never be a true team. According to my family, he's going in the correct direction. That blonde Jay, Ino grumbled in response. 10 minutes later they reached the edge of the forest they had been traveling through, revealing Naruto who was glaring at Anko who was munching dangos happily. Landing adroitly, followed by Ino, Shino also noted a bound and unconscious child at her feet being used as a footstool. Turning away from that, he glanced at the barbed wire fence behind the woman. It seemed rather ominous actually. Why was there a fence here separating two sections of forest? About time, Anko said, finishing off her dango. Yeesh, thought you'd get here couple hours ago. Yeah, Naruto said in response. Oi, so what now? Anko flashed him a smile, before climbing ot her feet while holding a length of rope which was attached to the bundle at her feet. Well, I am taking this run home, then getting some sake. You guys are going in there to find your applications for the Chunin exam in 3 days. Really? Naruto said excitedly. Ino made an uneasy noise while Shino arched an eyebrow, which was more due to the way Naruto shifted from petulant to excited. Only early he had been lamenting and berating Anko and now he looked as if he was about to hug the woman. It was an odd dynamic that worried him for some reason. Yeah, like hey, it thought you're ready. Anko said as if in exasperation. All you have to do now is decide to take the exam or not. If you do, fill the applications out and hand them in at room 301 at 4 p.m. day after tomorrow. Yes, one step closer to Hokage. So, like, where exactly did you put them? Ino asked, sounding annoyed and not bothering to hide it. You'll have to work that out for yourselves, Anko said, simply shooting her a sharp look. So you guys have a good day. Turning, the woman started to walk away, dragging a squirming Konohamaru behind her before she paused and looked back over his shoulder at Ino. Oh, and princess, try not to get yourself K. Shino winced, watching the woman casually continue on her way, leaving a now fuming Ino behind. Ino felt a hint of anxiety forming in her, staring at that fence, topped with barbed wire, and beyond that to the forbidding trees. Maybe she was merely projecting her own feelings, but it definitely felt malevolent. Shifting her attention to Naruto, she was relieved to see what appeared to be uncertainty on his face. So, like, what you do think? Ino finally asked, glancing at Shino and then back to the forest. It would appear we have no choice, Shino said calmly. Oi, it's just some scary woods, Naruto said boisterously, moving toward the fence slightly. Idiot, look at those signs, Ino snapped, gesturing at the battered and weather-worn signs before them. This place is dangerous. Bah, it's just a mind game. Naruto said in dismissal, jumping to the top of the fence, careful to not touch the barbed wire. Ino shot Shino an exasperated look, only to sigh as Shino followed the blonde's lead. Shaking her head, knowing this would not lead to anything worthwhile, followed both boys. Landing carefully, performing a balancing act to keep from getting her feet up from the barbed wire. Annoyed, she shifted her attention away from the immediate area to a splotch of red and an outcropping of some sort. Oi, doesn't look so bad, Naruto said, nodding in her peripheral vision. I don't think, Ino started to say, only to blink in surprise as he jumped off the fence and fell through a hidden pit. Naruto. Jumping down alongside Shino, they both peered into the hole to find Naruto spread eagle, holding himself a hair's breadth over several sharpened bamboo poles. Kami, Ino said, kneeling beside the hole. Are you okay, Naruto? Gee, let me think, Naruto shouted back sarcastically. I'm in a hole, with sharp pointy objects pointed at me. Yeah, I'm just great, Ino. Well, I was just asking. Ino shouted back before looking at Shino. So, how should we get him out? Shino, however, was denied his chance to respond when Naruto suddenly exploded from the pit and landed in a crouch. Oi, when I get my hands on that psychotic, I'm going to shove those damn dango sticks up her. Ino blinked, staring at him in surprise. The way he talked about so causally assaulting his own sensei frightened her. Then again, the way Anko had treated him, she could understand it, but still disturbing. Shaking it off, she turned her mind back to the more serious problem. So, like, where do you think she put those applications? Most likely in the center, Shino answered stoically as ever. If we go there, we may find what we are looking for. So we just go in a straight line, Naruto said decisively, climbing to his feet while stretching. Weren't you paying attention? Ino suddenly demanded, infuriated by what he was saying. I doubt that we can just, like, walk through this. This place is dangerous, we could get ourselves Oi. We gotta get those applications. Naruto retorted, rounding on her. Going straight is the best answer. That ranks right up there with, counting to 3, as a plan. Ino snapped in frustration. Do you have a better idea? Ino narrowed her gaze on him, but remained silent. Aha, so we go straight, Naruto exclaimed, setting off fearlessly. He does have a point, Shino said calmly as well. The quickest path is a straight line. I'm sure, Ino said, climbing to her feet to trudge after Shino and Naruto. Not that she didn't trust the blonde somewhat, but there was no telling what that crazy woman had done. Hell, from the way Anko had treated them so far, Ino wouldn't have been surprised if she was seriously trying to K them. Fuming and worrying over the various problems they were now facing, Ino almost didn't feel it, the brush of strong yet giving thread. Yet she did feel it, and she froze, her memory replaying a moment not so long ago when she had snapped something similar. Then she heard it, the vague sound of another set of wires being snapped. Looking up, she found Naruto frozen as well, the obvious source of the now compounded blunder. Her first instinct was to shout at him, but her second instinct, which came from the fact that she could already hear the rushing weapons, was to move. Then she was left in stunned amazement as Naruto shoved Shino behind him, apparently squaring up to the incoming hail of weapons. Futon, Daitopper. There was a soft roar, which quickly grew in strength, until suddenly everything in Naruto's path bent and swayed as if hit by wind from a tornado. Branches snapped off, there was the deep crack of trees that would not bend, and most notable was the hail of kunai which twisted and turned away to embedded themselves in all sorts of locations. The mysterious storm persisted for another minute and then quickly the accompanying noise to a soft murmur. Relaxing her muscles for the moment, Ino sighed in relief, then glared at Naruto. Let's go straight, you said. Oi. You're the one that set off that first trap. Naruto snapped, rounding on her. Only 'cause I was distracted thinking about your sensei. Ino shouted angrily. Whose fault is that? Yours. Oh yeah. Fine. If you don't want me here, I'm leaving. Naruto shouted and then turning stormed off. Fine, go. Ino shouted, waving her hands after him before turning to storm off in the opposite direction. That's stupid, Naruto grumbled, leaping from branch to branch, trying desperately to find a suitable, what, Ino exactly was. All he really knew was that she was stupid and got his last nerve. Angry and fuming, he began to grin manically, picturing Ino suffering some of the tea that Anko had first threatened him with. Would serve her right, Naruto agreed, nodding smugly. Hearing the sound of yet another tripwire being snapped, he dodged the incoming hail by instinct, then hearing the hiss of her exploding note, scrambled onward, snapping another 2 wires and hastily dodged the hail from the weapons. Damn it! Landing heavily with a stumble, he looked behind him at the ruined path, scratching at the back of his head. Maybe this place is a little dangerous. Naruto nodded, then snorted, turning to walk on, still not any reason to be afraid though. Smug that he wouldn't fall for any more traps, he boldly began to whistle. At least until the world flashed and turned upside down. Wah! Naruto managed as he suddenly found himself frantically clawing at the ground to keep from falling, with his hair on end while weapons fell into the sky. He thought briefly of clutching at the escaping weapons but didn't dare for fear of falling. Below him the darkening sky stretched onwards, and he knew that if he tried to move, he would fall away from the earth completely. He could already feel a headache forming from all of the bee rushing to his head, which even Naruto knew was not a good thing. Frantic now, he began trying to focus on something, anything, that would allow him to handle this situation. Sadly, though not surprisingly, Anko had never prepared him for this situation. Okay, he said through a forced calm while keeping his eyes squeezed shut, I'm upside down, so obviously this is like tree walking. Nodding, he molded the chakra to his feet and carefully climbed back to his feet, relieved to find that it was working. Opening his eyes tentatively, he looked at his feet glued to the earth and then let out a breath, even as his ears began to pound from the bee racing to his head. So now, the blonde paused, and considered, feeling odd, as if something about this situation was even more off than the sheer face that up was down and down was up. Where had he felt this before? Then slowly, through the headache of having his bee rush to his head, he realized this was what it had felt like when Anko had put him in a genjutsu that morning. Which, well, it didn't help him any really. After all, he couldn't dispel them, so it didn't do him too good to know it was a genjutsu. Maybe storming off on his own hadn't been such a good idea after all. Not that it was doing him much good to just stand there and think about that sort of thing, but it was getting difficult to think with the bee rushing to his head. Okay, so, I'm supposed to try and stop my chakra and disrupt it, only I'm not sure how to do that. Thinking he could see no way out of this, damn it, if he could just disrupt his chakra. Well, maybe if someone else was around they could do it for him, but there wasn't anybody around. Then realization hit him, his cage bunshin. They were people, sorta, and they could use chakra. If he made one and had it, mold its chakra into his. Would that work? Well, he wouldn't know until he tried. Molding his chakra, he concentrated producing one, which promptly scrambled to hold onto the earth. Oi, it just an illusion, now stand up and try to mold your chakra into me. The clone blinked then did asked, which sadly didn't seem to work. Then in another flash the world was right side up and Vertigo seized the blonde and he toppled to his hands and knees taking several deep breaths. Recovered, he shakily climbed back to his feet and looked around for the source of the genjutsu. Spotting the seal he cursed, nearly his forehead at the obviousness of it. He did take some pride in the fact that he had figured out how to handle genjutsu, but still he wouldn't have fallen for it in the first place if Shino or Ino had been around. Frowning, he looked at his idol clone, as if holding a private debate, which in a way he was. The simple fact was that he needed his team. If he wasn't careful we would end up and they were probably already facing that situation. Oi, you go on ahead and set off traps and etc. So I have some idea of what to expect, Naruto finally said, turning as he clone took off. Grumbling, the real Naruto set off once more at a brisk pace, retracing his steps hoping that he could come across his team. Well, probably be best to create more clones and have them help, which of course is what he did. When he did find them, 10 minutes later, he found them struggling against a group of puppets. Shino was preforming admirable, his bugs clogging the joints and rendering them unmoving, while Ino's sword was dancing around her, literally, deflecting anything the puppets shot at her before see them down. It actually appeared that they didn't need him, which troubled Naruto. Just what did that say about him, if the two that were supposed to be weaker than him were doing better than he was? Then he saw it, two traps springing at the same time, and he acted without thinking. Two cage bunshins popped into existence, each preforming a kawarimi with a startled Ino and Shino, which allowed two massive logs to complete their swings safely. Then on the heels of this, Naruto concentrated once more and pulled off yet another futon, Daitopper scattering the remaining attack puppets into the forest and nearly knocking both of his teammates over in the process. Finished and grinning, Naruto broke cover and landed between the two. Hi, looked like you guys needed some help. Looked like, Ino repeated dryly, putting her sword up, fixing him with an intense glare. We were nearly You had to go storming off in a huff, leaving us alone in a forest with so many damn traps that it's a wonder we're still alive. Oi, I just saved you and now you're gonna blame me. Naruto shouted back, eye twitching. Might I suggest that instead of arguing we attempt to figure out what exactly we should do now? Shino said softly, moving between them to act as a mediator. Fine, Ino sniffed, crossing her arms. Whatever, Naruto nodded, kicking at the ground in annoyance, willing to back off for the moment. Ino still annoyed the hell out of him though, and he was seriously considering shaving her head. It does appear that we are out of our element, Shino continued stoically as ever. Perhaps we should withdraw and see if we cannot speak with someone about this. You want to give up? Naruto said, blankly staring at the boy, and then glanced at a startled, but relieved, looking Ino. It is the only logical choice, Shino said with a small shrug. We cannot function properly in this environment, thus the wisest course is to seek help and try again later. Yeah, Ino said, almost uncertain. Besides, why should we have to trek through this insane forest to get those stupid applications? I mean, I know I can handle myself a bit better, but I don't think we're ready for this exam. Naruto blinked, looking between them, his stomach churning at what he was hearing. They wanted to give up and run away. How could they? No, why would they? Frowning, he absently clenched his fist, his thoughts on everything he had heard and felt in those few minutes focusing into one thought, not giving up. I can't believe, you seriously want to go back and give up. Well, screw that. Lifting his head, he met both of the gazes, his voice strained with anger and determination. I'm tired of people telling me what I can't do. That I can't be a ninja. That I can't reach my dreams. I'm going to get to that damn application, I'm gonna sign it and I'm going to present it. And then I'm going keep kicking her until that old man has to make me Hokage. Like, you seriously believe you can do that? No, I know we can. Naruto said fiercely. If we can stop fighting each other and work together, we can kick this forest, sir. Maybe, Shino allowed. Oi, we're a team, there is no maybe about it. Naruto said, glaring at the boy. So are we going to get those applications or not? Damn it, Ino muttered, sounding almost happy, let's go. When the idiot's right, he's right. Hey, Naruto shouted, fighting his urge to stick his tongue out at her when he noticed what appeared to be a teasing smile. Instead he looked at Shino, asking without saying a word if he was with them or not. The bug user nodded slightly, hands in his pockets. If we are going to be properly rested tomorrow we need to move now. Right, Naruto said excitedly, before scratching the back of his head, so, UHMM, triangle formation. It seems a good idea, who should be point? Naruto blinked, his mind finally catching up with what was going on. I guess, you. 'Cause ya know, you'd notice the traps first. Or at least before Blondie over there. What was that? Ino shot back, before flipping her hair back over her shoulder. You're a blonde too, you know. Oi. But I'm a guy blonde, Naruto shot back cheekily as they took off, means I'm 1% smarter than girl blondes. Does not. Does so. Take it back or so help me I'm going to. See. That proves it. You can't even think of a good threat. Naruto see her off, laughing. Ugh. Anko was drunk. Not fall down drunk, and not slightly buzzed, but almost a happy medium. There was a drunken sway to her walk, a slurring of her speech, almost a sense of detachment from the world. She was no less of course, but still, she was drunk, and her reaction time was somewhat off kilter. Nobody, however, could say she was a quiet drunk. Singing, shouting, T. Kakashi who had unwisely agreed to a date for his book, it had all been an event of the night. Now of course back in her apartment, settling in for her third night of blissful sleep, she had set about devouring her entire stock of dango. Therein was her first mistake. For of course she was by far too idealistic to believe that in the nearly 12 hours that she had been out, Naruto and his team would not have returned to the village. Or more to the point that Naruto, the #1 prankster in Konoha, would not get revenge for tossing them into a Kagahara. It was not until her stomach gave an ominous rumbling, after 3 hours of devouring dango, that she realized that something could be wrong. Abandoning her meal and climbing to her feet, she felt a sharp pain and paused, her suspicious nature coming to the forefront. Swaying her way through the living room and into the kitchen, she swept her gaze around the counters and the off-white refrigerator. Flipping a light on, she stumbled into the kitchen, giving it all a much closer inspection. Nothing seemed out of place, nor did the dango appear tampered with. Yet somehow she knew that something had been done, something that was about to have very disastrous results. For her stomach suddenly felt like lead. Exerting her will over her now nearly traitorous stomach, Anko settled her gaze on her trash can. Walking over, a hand resting on her stomach with sweat standing out on her skin, she lifted the lid. There on the very top of the trash was a box, an over-the-counter box, of medicine. Picking the box up, she began to read, slowly working out the words. Konoha's #1, extra strength, chocolate, laxative. Anko paused, frowning as the last word took a moment to register. Then as the words reached her, she felt a sharp pain shoot through her and she dropped the box and eyes wide. The drunk Jonin spun and made a mad dash for the bathroom. After nearly tearing the bathroom door off the hinges and then the bathroom door shut, it was at this point that Anko decided she would have to use a spoon to see the heart out of Naruto. Why? Because she discovered, belatedly, her second mistake. She had not checked the toilet seat for plastic wrap. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.